It being 2 p.m, we'll move to question time and a call of Senator Duniam.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. Minister, I refer to data released yesterday by the Commonwealth Bank, which shows Australians are now spending 20% or more of their pre-tax income servicing their mortgage, a figure not seen since the GFC and double what they were paying in the late 1990s. Commonwealth Bank Chief Executive Matt Commons stated, and I quote, that we expect to see further increases in arrears in the months ahead, given continued pressure on real household disposable incomes. With unemployment today spiking to 4.2%, how are Australians who are facing joblessness, persistent inflation and ongoing rate pain supposed to get by?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister Wong.
Thank you. As I have said repeatedly this week, we understand Australians are doing it tough. We understand the pressures on families, on so many parts of our community, and that is why this government has been so focused on seeking to deliver and delivering the tax cuts. This is why this government has been focused on ensuring that every household gets an energy rebate, along with 1 million small businesses. And that is why this government has been so focused on ensuring that low-paid workers get pay rises, and 2.6 million low-paid workers have received their third consecutive pay rise back by this government, not by those opposite, but by this government. We understand the extent to which people are finding making ends meet difficult, and that is why the budget delivered the cost of living measures that it did. That is why the government reframed the Stage 3 tax cuts in the way that we did, so that we ensured that every Australian got a tax cut, unlike those opposite who only wanted the weight of the tax cuts to be for much higher income levels in Australia. So what I would say to the senator, we all care about the cost of living pressures Australians face. Some of us actually work at delivering change. Some of us actually work at delivering tax cuts to everybody. Some of us work to deliver energy rebates. Some of us work to deliver cheaper childcare. Some of us work to deliver cheaper medicines, and some of us work to ensure wages are fair and decent. Those people who do so are members of the Albanese Labor government. Those who oppose it are those opposite.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Duniam, first supplementary.
Thanks, President. Minister, the CBA data also reveals that this ongoing financial strain is leading to an increase in the number of households falling behind on their repayments, with the value of past due home loans increasing from $14.8 billion to $17.6 billion last financial year. A sizable portion of that increase is from households that are so far behind that they're unlikely to recover unless they receive external support. With inflation persisting due to your government's actions, how do you expect these households to actually survive?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister Wong.
Well, I'll take issue with that assertion, and yet again we see that the true motivation behind the coalition's questioning about cost of living, their true motivation is not actually to try and ensure Australians get anything more. Their true motivation is simply to try and play politics with cost of living. That's all it is. And you know how you can see that? You see that from the way in which he asked the question, and you see that by the fact that those opposite have opposed so many of the cost of living measures that this government has put in place. So if you want to come in here and you talk to me about people who are struggling, why don't you stand up and tell them all you voted against energy price relief? Why don't you stand up and tell them all you voted for more expensive medicines? Why don't you stand up and tell them you don't support cheaper childcare? Because all of these things are things you oppose, Senator Duniam.
You
would have Australians having a worse.
Senator Duniam, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Well, Minister, overnight data from the United States revealed that inflation has eased in the world's largest economy to 2.9% for the year, the lowest rate in roughly 3 years, and locking in a likely rate cut from the Federal Reserve. Minister, How long will Australians have to wait for a rate cut and an inflation figure below 3%?
Thank you, Senator Duniam. Minister Wong.
Well, I would make the point, Senator Duniam, that inflation had a 6 in front of it when we came to government. 6 in front of it when we came to government, and now it has a 3 in front of it.
Order across the chamber. I've called order across the chamber. Minister Wong, please continue.
Thank you. It had a 6 in front of it when we came to government. It's now got a 3 in front of it, but he's trying to make a political point. At the same time as this bloke and all of them come in here and vote against cost of living relief, then they try to pretend to the Australian people they care about cost of living. We all know, actually, all you care about is a political attack. That is all you care about. On this side, we care about making sure we deliver cost of living relief to Australians because we understand how hard they are doing it. That is what the difference between you and us. We are trying to ensure higher wages, cheaper medicines, cheaper childcare, and give people some relief on energy. All the things you oppose.
Has expired. Senator Ciccone.
Hello, President, and happy Thursday. Now, my question is to a minister that does care about cost of living, and that is to the Minister for Finance and for the Minister for Women, Senator Gallagher. Now, the focus of the Albanese government, as we know, for the past 2 years has been fighting inflation, getting wages moving again and providing cost of living relief where we can. Providing support for annual wage reviews and addressing the gender pay gap has been a core plank of our wages and economic policy. Now, Minister, can you please update the Senate on the data that was released by the ABS today?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. I thank Senator Ciccone for the question and for the big supporter he is of closing the gender pay gap and supporting women at work, which we often see him playing that important role in here with his gorgeous son, who he brings in here from time to time. President, the data today is clear, and it's really important data that we've seen released from the ABS today that shows that we have a record all-time low in the gender pay gap of 10.8%. When we came to government, it was 14.1%. And we know the important reforms that we have put in place to keep driving that gender pay gap lower and lower. In May, when we came to government, it was 14.1%. It dropped down to a 2.6% drop. Today, it's 11.5%, a record low. The Albanese government continues to work to close the gender pay gap through valuing female-dominated sectors and supporting wage increases to those on the minimum wage. And we remember those opposite when they provided a submission to the Fair Work Commission. They had that little chapter that said the importance of low-paid work. It was a pretty important chapter because that supported their wage stagnation policy that they ran for a decade, the importance of low-paid work. We have introduced reforms to the Fair Work Act to make sure that gender equality is considered as part of the Fair Work Commission's work, but also, importantly, providing those significant wage increases to highly feminised industries like aged care and the announcement we did last week on early childhood educators. I don't know what those opposite are muttering about. I would have thought driving the gender pay gap lower and lower and lower, something they weren't able to do, is something we would all welcome.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Ciccone, first supplementary.
Thanks, Minister. That's great news for many working women. It's also great news for many men, our children and the community. Now, with the cost of living relief being a key priority of this government, it's not just wages that the government is focused on, even though those laugh across the aisle. Can the minister please outline other measures the Albanese government is taking to support the cost of living pressures that are facing many Australians in our community?
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President, and I can. Importantly, this result today, the new data released by the ABS today, show that national gender pay gap is the lowest on record, today falling to 11.5% from 12% in November 2023, and 14.1% in May 2022. Under the Albanese government, and this number is really important, women's average weekly earnings have increased by $173.80 a week since May 2022. And for those opposite that pretend they care about cost of living, this is a significant increase to women's average weekly earnings and should help. We know women are often in charge of budgets across their households. We know women feel the pinch when cost of living is high. And our work has directly led to an increase of $173.80 per week earnings over the last 2 years.
Has expired. Senator Coney, second supplementary.
Thanks again, President. And it's fair to say there's more to do, but it's also very clear that this government is fighting inflation and delivering vital cost of living relief. This is in stark contrast to those opposite who are all talk and no action on this issue. Now, Minister, please outline what policies, like keeping wages low and the slash-and-burn approach, would be disastrous for the economy and Australian workers.
Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, and I thank Senator Coney for the supplementary. This week in the Senate, Senator Hume confirmed that a Dutton coalition government would cut billions of dollars in services that Australians rely on. Yes, you did. You say it every time you complain about the additional spending in our budgets. That is what you're saying. It's double speak. It's double speak. You're trying to have it both ways. We're not going to let you have it. Every time you complain about the extra spending, you've got to explain what that means about pensions, what that means about job seeker, what that means about rent assistance, what it means about energy bill relief. Asked
Minister
a number
Gallagher,
of times
please resume
this
your
morning.
seat. Senator Hume.
Point of order, Madam President. I feel I'm being misrepresented.
Senator Hume, resume your seat. Resume your seat. And I will remind you, Senator Hume, when the minister is answering, I expect silence. I called order. You are not in an argument with me. I called order and you continued to ignore me. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. As our economic plan is working, we are driving down inflation. We are providing cost of living relief where we can. We are getting wages moving again. And women of Australia should listen to what those opposites say, because they're not interested in what you earn. We have put in place measures which have ensured women get the pay they deserve, and it's driving down the gender pay gap.
The time for answering has expired. Senator McDonald.
My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, this week you've continued to insist that the RBA finds Labor's policies to be so helpful, stating that the bank does acknowledge that energy bill price relief will put downward pressure on headline inflation. However, the RBA's chief economist stated that those particular policies are only legislated for 1 year. By their nature, they are time-limited and temporary. The RBA governor even talked about inflation popping back up after these temporary policies. Does the Albanese government accept the clear advice from the RBA that these short-term policies will do little to change Australia's persistent, homegrown inflation?
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much. I'm not entirely sure whether those opposite are for the energy bill relief or against it. I think they were against it, and now they seem to be arguing to extend it. That's what I took from the question. So you're arguing to extend it,
Minister,
I think.
please resume your seat. Order. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. And I noticed the Shadow Finance Minister, when asked about 2 or 3 times this morning about whether or not they would move to abolish the energy bill rebates, there wasn't the answer. There wasn't an answer at all. So come in here, vote against them, complain about
Senator
the extra spending, but then aren't able to answer the simple question of do they support or do they not. Now, the reality is, when we came to government, inflation had a 6 in front of it. It now has a 3 in front of it. And inflation is moderating, as the RBA has confirmed and as our Treasury forecasts confirm. The RBA has made a number of statements, including that running surplus budgets, something that those opposite were unable to do despite the mugs being sent out and despite them being fundraised over, that surplus budgets are actually supporting the bank's work when they are trying using monetary policy. Now, in addition to that, I think the governor has pointed out that we are doing the job that we needed to do. Well, the forecast shows, Senator Birmingham, the forecast show that inflation continues to moderate. They might not.
Please resume your seat. Minister Wong.
I'll ask the Leader of the Opposition perhaps to just cease his interjection against the Minister for Finance for a second. And maybe don't call me.
Senator Birmingham.
You're going to call me that? Really? I mean, we've let it go. They're very keen to complain if others interject on them.
Order.
And I
Order.
remember Senator Brandes threatening to throw me out. No, I've never said that, Senator. But I said,
Senator Wong, I'll address
Thank you.
the point of order. I have called Senator Birmingham in particular to order, and I have called the Senate in particular to order. And I would remind senators that question time is a time to listen and to respond if your name is against a question. Other than that, there should be silence. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. And in the time left, it's probably appropriate that I repeat the Governor's statement from the 8th of August, where she acknowledges that the government's job is to get inflation down, but also to provide services and infrastructure that the Australian people need, like energy bill rebates, for example. And here we go. Here I finish on this. My personal view is that they're doing what they can.
Senator McDonald, first supplementary.
That's the best a socialist can do.
Minister, why are the central banks of Brazil, Canada, Chile, the United Kingdom, China, Mexico and the EU cutting interest rates when Australia is not? What is it that the rest of the world is getting right that the Albanese Labor government seems to be getting so wrong?
Just a moment, Senator Gallagher. I haven't called you. The minute that Senator McDonald finished her question, Senator McKenzie, you immediately interjected. Order, order. That it goes for you too, Senator Ayres. I expect there to be silence. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you very much. And Senator McDonald asked about international rates comparison. And facts do matter. And the facts are that inflation peaked here later than most other countries. Rates started rising here later than most other countries, and they rose less here than most other countries. So facts do matter, and they are the facts. And we've seen around the world, and the Governor herself has acknowledged this, that inflation doesn't always come down in a linear way. It zigs and zags and sometimes can be more sticky, and it is in other countries as well. It is in other countries as well. We saw inflation tick up in the most recent data in the euro area and earlier in the year in North America. So the important thing for Australians to understand is that inflation is moderating, government policies are supporting that, and at the same time we're providing important cost of living relief to help them through these times.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator McDonald, second supplementary.
Minister, you often cite that the only reason Australia's central bank is taking longer to cut rates is because, unlike many of the countries listed previously, inflation peaked later, lower than in other parts of the world. Minister, even this logic suggests Australia should now have had at least one rate cut. How is it that Australia is still experiencing a worsening inflation crisis with no rate cut in sight?
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Minister Gallagher.
Not right to say that, Senator McDonald. It's not right. It's not. No, the way that she ended that question with is not correct. Inflation is moderating. It is moderating in line with the forecasts. It's moderating in line. In fact, it was spot on in terms of the RBA forecasts, who continue to say that they expect inflation to moderate. So those opposite what might like to manufacture this crisis for their own political purposes, they were the only ones last week.
Order.
They were the only ones last week out there trying, hoping desperately for an interest rate increase, hoping desperately
Minister,
for
please
one.
resume your seat. Order. Senator McGrath, I have called you personally a number of times. Minister, please continue.
Thank you. But the reality is, President, inflation continues to moderate. Our policies are supporting that. We are providing cost-of-living relief that puts downward pressure on inflation but helps family budgets at the same time. Our policies are working, they will continue to work, and we will continue to support Australians.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Faruqi.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Education. The Prime Minister graduated with a Bachelor of Economics in 1984. He did not pay a single dollar for tuition fees for his degree. A student commencing the same degree in 2025 will be slammed with more than $50,000 in student debt. So will anyone doing an arts degree because of the Morrison government's job-ready graduate fee hikes, which the Albanese government has been all too happy to retain. Student debt is making the cost of living crisis worse, locking people out of the housing market and crushing dreams of going to uni. Year 12 student Saria Ratnam wrote this week in the Sydney Morning Herald, "As a Year 12 student, I dream of doing an arts degree. The price would be a lifetime of debt." Minister, why is your government punishing students with $50,000 arts degrees?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Watt.
Thanks. Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Faruqi. It is the case, of course, that as the years have gone by, students and graduates have been asked to make a contribution towards the cost of their university education. That process actually began not long before I started university, all those years ago. Of course, as a result of that, I incurred a student debt as a way of contributing towards the cost of my education, as did many people, no doubt, in this chamber. Now, of course, the Greens would like us to believe, or would like other people to believe, that the Labor government has done nothing whatsoever about the issues facing younger people, including university students. The only problem with the Greens' argument is that we actually have. For example, this year's budget waived $3 billion worth of student debt for the very university students that you are asking about. No government has done that before in Australia's history, certainly no coalition government, which was prepared to— so Senator Henderson doesn't like cutting student debt. Good to get your position on the record.
Senator Henderson.
Thank you, Senator Henderson, for confirming that the coalition does not support waiving student debt.
Senator Henderson.
This very budget, Senator Faruqi—
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator Henderson.
Point of order, and particularly in relation to respect shown by the minister, I'd ask that he not misrepresent my position.
Senator Henderson, as you well know, that is not a point of order, and I will also remind you that when I call your name, I expect you to come to order. Minister Watt, please continue.
Thank you, President. So the Albanese government is very proud of the fact that we're the first government in Australia's history to waive student debt in the way that we announced in this year's budget. So we have cut $3 billion from HECS Help and other student support loans for more than 3 million people. Geez, they're really grumpy about cutting student debt, aren't they, President? They're really upset about cutting student debt. I'm really surprised that you'd be upset about that. But again, you did vote against cost of living relief for everyone, so I guess you would also dislike making life easier for university students. I guess that's a consistent position. We have also provided $350.3 million to fully fund fee-free university-ready courses, $427.4 million to establish a new Commonwealth crack payment.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Faruqi, first supplementary.
The plan you refer to is your government's tinkering around the edges, Band-Aid plan to address soaring student debt, which will still see student debts rise by 11.5% in your first term and will provide no cost of living relief. So there's nothing to crow about here. Minister, why won't your government do the right thing and wipe all student debt?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Watt.
So, again, we've seen this pattern this week with the Greens. They were really upset that a Labor government delivered a pay rise to early childhood educators. What a terrible thing to do. Got to get up and complain about it in here. And now they're really upset about a Labor government cutting HECS by $3 billion for university graduates. They're really upset about providing $427.4 million in payments to university students undertaking crack throughout their course. basically you're just really, really upset, aren't you? You're really upset about the fact that you are never going to be in a government able to do any of these things that actually deliver real relief to people, rather than running around having a rally, having a social media blast, complaining and being really, really upset. Like, that is all you have the capacity to do. You have no capacity to do anything that helps anyone. Good luck to you. We're getting on and delivering real relief rather than being really, really upset.
Thank you, Minister. Minister, I remind you, when you're responding to a question, to address the chair. Senator Faruqi, second supplementary.
Minister, the students can see right through your PR farce. The Job Ready Graduate Scheme was an unmitigated disaster. Punitive fee hikes that punished students and tried to manipulate their study choices was a disgraceful plan to start off with. And in opposition, Labor said the scheme was beyond repair. And the Uni Accord process has said the scheme needs urgent remediation. So, Minister, with a progressive parliament, you have the numbers to immediately scrap job-ready graduates.
Thank
Why
you, Senator
won't
Faruqi. Your time has expired. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Well, we know that the Greens' political strategy is always to try to criticise what Labor does and say that we should do more. It doesn't really matter what we do. You'll always complain and say we should do more. It doesn't matter if it's housing that you want to stop happening. It doesn't matter if it's reducing childcare fees that you don't want to have happening. Everything is never enough and everything is never good enough to actually vote for, because we know that right now you're working with the coalition to stop investment in housing, as you are across many other ways. I'm proud of the fact that everyone on this side of the chamber is a member of a government that has delivered the real relief to university graduates that they deserve. I'm really proud of the fact that we're making pracs much more affordable for students to be able to undertake, whether they're doing nursing, midwifery, teaching or social work. I'm really proud of the fact that we've changed the indexation of HECS debts for, I think, the first time ever, to make sure that that won't happen again. Oh, yeah, we know Senator Henderson's upset about that too.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Billick.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, Senator McAllister. Could the Minister please update the chamber on progress of the government's reliable renewables plan in supporting the rollout of reliable and affordable energy for Australian families and businesses?
Thank you, Senator Billick. Minister McAllister.
Well, thank you for the question, Senator Billick. Well, I'm delighted to report the news from AEMO, the market operator, today. And their CEO, Daniel Westerman, has said this: electricity generated from the sun, wind and water is already meeting 40% of our energy needs throughout the year, peaking at world-leading records above 72% on the East Coast and 84% on the West Coast. South Australia and Tasmania already regularly meet more than 100% of their operational electricity demand from renewables. And for a 30-minute interval last December, rooftop solar alone provided more than 100% of South Australia's entire underlying demand. And that is reliable renewables at work, powering the grid. Now, we know about the record. There's a lot of calls to talk a bit about the record, but the record is this. Under your government, 24 coal-fired power plants announced their closure dates. And Labor has a plan. You did nothing about it. But our plan is to replace that capacity, that exiting capacity, with the cheapest form of energy, and that is firmed renewables. And we're delivering. So under Labor, we have seen a 25% increase in renewables in the national grid. We've greenlit more than 50 renewable projects, and there have been over 330,000 rooftop solar installations in the last year alone. We are maximising affordable, clean energy, getting our grid to 82% renewables by 2030 and investing in battery and storage and transmission to ensure reliable power everywhere.
Thank you, Minister McAllister. Senator Billick, first supplementary.
Minister, thank you for sharing that encouraging news about the rollout of renewable generation. At the risk of overexciting those on the other side, could the minister please update the chamber on the progress in the rollout of storage technologies such as large-scale batteries in supporting the rollout of reliable, affordable and renewable energy?
Just a moment, Minister McAllister. Order on my left. Order on my left. Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator. I'm pleased to have very good news on this front as well, because more storage is coming onto the grid. More of the cheapest form of energy is great news for Australians, for families and for businesses. And it is also great news for the Leader of the Opposition. Now, Mr Dutton said this about batteries back in March. He said, "Hopefully the battery technology is about to be discovered, but not yet." Now, it is my happy duty to inform him that not only have batteries been discovered, they are already firming our grid. In fact, last year, 4.1 gigawatts of big batteries commenced construction, more than 4 times the previous record set in 2021. And this year, we have already had 2.8 gigawatts begin construction in Australia. The plan for reliable renewables is
Thank you,
rolling
Minister.
out.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Billick, second supplementary.
Thank you for that answer, Minister. Could the minister explain—
Senator Billick, I'm sorry. Resume your seat. I'll wait for silence. Senator Billick, please continue.
Thank you again, Minister. Could the minister explain why the government has taken this approach to ensure that Australians have access to reliable and affordable energy?
Minister McAllister.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Billick. We take the approach we are taking because it is backed by the best advice from experts at both CSIRO and the market operator. There is, of course, another approach. There's another approach, isn't there, Senators? And it's the one taken by those over there to implement the most expensive form of energy known. That is the policy that is being pursued by those opposite. An analysis by the Smart Energy Council predicts that the 7 nuclear reactors proposed by the coalition would provide 3.7% of Australia's energy mix in 2050 and would cost around $600 billion. We have both the CSIRO and the chief scientists that they appointed saying that the earliest deployment would be in 2050. And it is no wonder it took them so long to get this out the door, because this policy
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering has expired. Senator Tyrrell.
Thank you, President. My question is for the Minister representing the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories, Senator McCarthy. A project for a $20 million cadet facility in Launceston is still at a standstill. 6 months ago, I asked in this chamber if a February 29th deadline for the critical land transfer was going to be met. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. Launceston residents have been left completely in the dark about what's happening with this cadet facility and if the project is even still on the table. Minister, can you tell me where the Northern Cadet Facility is at and if the land transfer has finally been completed?
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Tyrrell, for your question. I've certainly been reading up on the city deals, and I can say that the Australian government is continuing to work with the Tasmanian government and also the Tasmanian University in terms of that deal. I will say, Senator Tyrrell, as you're no doubt aware, that relationship between the Tasmanian government and the university is where this issue still lays. Until they sort out between the two of them the land tenure, we will still be waiting for that to be built.
Thank you, Minister McCarthy. Senator Tyrrell, first supplementary.
Ferry that they just paid for.
Another good point. This project was first put on the agenda 7 years ago and it's still at a stalemate. Lonnie residents keep being told that it's a very complex issue, which you've just highlighted. But we know that bureaucracy is at the heart of the hold-up. What is Labor doing to make sure that this project moves forward in this term of government? Because grown-ups in the room.
Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Tyrrell. As we know, that this did begin under the previous coalition government, in terms of the 7 years. And I do know that our minister is certainly working diligently, and not just with the city deals in Tasmania, but right across the country. And she's still working very closely, in particular with the Tasmanian government, to see this move along. And we can certainly. Well, I mean, it would be good, President. It would be good, President, if senators from Tasmania were perhaps asking this question too. In fact, you may want to actually speak to your Premier in Tasmania and ask what is actually going on, Senator Duniam.
Order. Order. Senators across the chamber. Senator McCarthy, have you concluded your answer? Thank you. Second supplementary, Senator Tyrrell.
Thanks, President. I get what you're putting down. The Tasmanian state government and the University of Tasmania have been thorns in the federal government's side for this project, previous and current. At what point will the federal government say enough is enough and give up? And if this project doesn't go ahead, will the Tasmanian state government and UTAS be to blame?
Minister McCarthy.
Thank you, President. I guess I just want to understand in that question, are you wanting the Australian government to give up?
Senator Tyrrell. Senator Tyrrell. Just allow the minister to answer. Thank you, Minister. Have you concluded?
I can certainly assure the senator that we will continue working. We are not giving up.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Bragg.
Thanks very much. My question is to the Minister representing the Housing Minister, Senator Farrell. What steps is the government taking to protect taxpayer funds held by the Housing Australia Future Fund from being used by the CFMEU via the super fund CBUS?
Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator Bragg for his question. Of course, we've got a new minister in this space, Minister O'Neill, of course, and she is she's making sure that the issues that we inherited from the incompetence of the former government are going to be resolved by this government, and of course well, if you want to do something, if you're serious about wanting to do something about the activities of the CFMEU, well then you can do one thing. You can do one thing this afternoon. You can do one thing this afternoon, and that is to vote for this legislation.
Minister Farrell,
legislation.
Please resume your seat. Senator Bragg.
Point of order, President, on relevance. The question was quite specific about the Housing Australia Future Fund.
Thank you. Order across. Senator Ayres. Order. I will draw the minister back to the question, but I'll also remind all senators, that if you make interjections, the minister is entitled to respond to those as well. Minister Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank you for that direction, because there is a way that the opposition can assist dealing with the issues that we face in this space, and
Senator
Cash, you're a key player in this. Senator Cash, it's within your capability of starting to resolve these issues, and you have to understand, Senator Cash, you have to understand that there is obligations on you to responsibly deal with this issue, and if you can intervene as much as you like, but the reality is, Senator Cash, you have an obligation. Thank
you, Senator Farrell. Order. The time's elapsed, Senator Henderson. So there's no point to make a point of order. Senator Bragg, first supplementary.
Thanks very much, President. I think the remarks are supposed to be directed—
I'm sorry, Senator Bragg. The chamber was
very rowdy.
Noisy. I'm going to ask you to begin again. Thank you.
Thanks, President. I think the remarks are supposed to be directed through the chair. But in any event, is the minister aware of the statement by the CBUS chair, Mr Wayne Swan, who says, quote, "We believe that investing through the HAF will meet the best financial interests of our members," end quote. But are those interests really those of the CFMEU?
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Before I call the minister, I will remind the minister to make his remarks to the chair. I'll also remind senators, particularly those on my left, but not exclusively, that they are to listen in silence. Minister Farrell.
President, I'm not sure if I understand that question, to be perfectly honest. Maybe, I don't know whether you wrote it yourself. I'm not sure whether you wrote it yourself, Senator Bragg, but it's a mystifying question for me. But can I say this in general response to your attacks on the Housing Australia Future Fund, that these are good people that are working very hard in the interest of this country to increase the supply of housing. One of the consequences of this Labor government doing so much to boost our economy, of course, is that we have brought in people from overseas. That's created an issue about housing. We are set about to deal with that issue, and the Housing Australia Future Fund, managed by Housing Australia,
thank you, Minister.
Those people
the time
are doing
for answering
exactly
has
that.
expired. Senator Bragg, second supplementary.
All right. Well, this is a very clear question, if the last one was a bit befuddling. Does the government regard CBUS, with 3 CFMEU trustees on its board, as an appropriate organisation for the HAF with which to do business?
Minister Farrell.
My understanding, Senator Bragg, is that, and this is a much clearer question, and I'm pleased you followed my advice to ask sensible, straightforward questions. My understanding is that that issue is now under review by APRA. And that is obviously an independent, well, you know, there are independent organisations in this country that we have that govern the ruling. I was a member of a superannuation fund, a very fine superannuation fund, Rest Superannuation Fund, for 15 years, and we were always governed by a set of rules which we complied with. Those rules will be applied in this case.
The time for answering has expired. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Minister, overwhelmingly Australians don't believe foreigners should be allowed to own residential property in our country, Australia. I first asked the Senate estimates in November last year how many potential foreign buyers is the ATO detecting through their data matching program. Your government failed to answer. In February, Senator Bragg asked and was given no answer. In June estimates, I asked again and didn't get an answer. Answers to my questions on notice for how many potential foreign buyers are detected are now overdue again. Minister, why is your government hiding from the Australian people the data on potential foreign buyers of residential property? And when will you actually answer the question I've been asking for 9 months?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you, President. And I recall you asking these questions, Senator Roberts, and I understood they were answered at the time by officials when I was sitting at that desk. Whether there's been follow-up questions that you've asked on notice that haven't been answered, I can certainly follow that up. But I think the evidence that we gave during Senate estimates was that foreign investment plays an important role in bolstering Australia's housing stock and creating additional jobs. in the construction industry, but it is monitored very closely for good reasons. It's tightly regulated, with foreign persons generally requiring foreign investment approval before acquiring an interest in residential land, regardless of its value, with few exceptions. And foreign investors make up a very small proportion of the total Australian residential property market, accounting for approximately 0.93% of new and established dwelling purchase transactions in 22-23. So, out of 479,257 transactions based on ATO data for 22-23, only 4,463 transactions were by foreign investors. So it is a relatively small or very small component, less than 1% of new and established dwelling purchase transactions in that financial year of 22-23. This is something I think that senators have raised through estimates as being interested in, and certainly raising concerns about foreign investors squeezing out local residents from being able to purchase housing. But certainly the evidence would show that it's a very small component of the residential property market and the transactions that are being monitored, as was explained in estimates by the ATO.
The time has expired. Senator Roberts, first supplementary.
Thank you. The New South Wales State Government reported more than twice the number of overseas purchases of property as the Foreign Investment Review Board recorded in 2021. The board claims foreigners buy less than 1% of residential property, and you just confirmed that. Yet in the first quarter NAB property survey, real estate agents say they're selling 10% of Australian housing to foreigners. Minister, if you have confidence in the Foreign Investment Review Board, why won't you hand over the data?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister Gallagher.
Again, I'm not sure which part of the data hasn't been answered, because I was sitting at estimates when you were given figures, Senator Roberts. So I'm not sure which is the data that you're seeking. But certainly the ATO data that I just read out, and again can provide this in writing to you, shows that it is 0.93%. for that financial year in 22-23. Also that it has come down, as I understand it, from a peak in 2015-2016. The ATO does residential real estate compliance investigations. So they do follow this up and check that people are compliant with the requirements of the foreign ownership of residential property. They identified 428 properties for compliance. They did 410 investigations and found 145 properties in breach. 55 of those resulted in divorce.
Senator Roberts, second supplementary.
Thank you. Minister, you want foreign investment, yet foreign ownership is against Australians' interests. Minister, this country is in a housing crisis. When will you ban foreign ownership of residential real estate and put Australians in Australian houses first?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister Gallagher.
Well, we're not going to do that, Senator Roberts, and I think the numbers show we need a good, strong rules around it. There are strong rules around it. We need compliance of those rules. There's good compliance processes. It's less than 1%. And this country has benefited from foreign investment. We've benefited in terms of our economy,
Senator
in terms of jobs.
Order. Please continue, Minister.
So it isn't something that we are seeking to ban. But what I would say is it would help if some of our housing programs, which are currently stalled in the Senate, were given the approval by the Senate, because then we could build more supply, which is the actual issue. I know there wants to be a lot of distractions about who's to blame, and it's easy to blame foreign ownership. The statistics don't support that. And what I would say to the Senate is I think there's a couple of bills that are stuck in this chamber that would help people into home ownership and help increase supply of housing in this country. And I would say let's get on with that job.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Payman.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Immigration, Senator Watt. On my regional tour of WA, I heard time and time again about the challenges facing regional WA when it comes to skills shortages. Businesses are struggling to keep their doors and services open to their communities because they just can't get the staff. Small businesses and industry in the Midwest and Gascoyne regions were consulted for months on the skills they need to get by. The results? Teachers, truck drivers, accountants, manufacturers. Skills that help our regional communities to thrive. A designated area migration agreement was lodged for the Midwest and Gascoyne regions in November last year, but there has been no response. Minister, when will this DARMA be approved so Western Australians in the Midwest and Gascoyne regions can access the skills they so desperately need?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator, for the question. I think everyone understands that there are many parts of regional Australia that are experiencing skill shortages at the moment, particularly as a result of the complete collapse in investment in skills and training that we saw over the last 10 years under the coalition government. I know you don't like being reminded of your record, but it is your record. You can't run away from it. You cut funding for skills and training, and now we're paying the price of it. I'm sorry, but it's true. Now, and I acknowledge that Western Australia is one of the states, including in regional Western Australia, that is seeking more skilled workers. Of course, the government's primary vehicle for dealing with that issue is our investment in fee-free TAFE, because we do want to make sure that Australians do have the skills and training required to take up the jobs that are on offer, whether it be in regional Australia or more broadly. Of course, we can't meet all of our labour needs, workforce needs, through domestic workers, and that's why the government does enter into, through the Department of Home Affairs, designated area migration agreements. And as I'm sure Senator Payman is aware, the way they operate is they're a formal agreement between the Department of Home Affairs and a regional, state or territory authority. They provide more access to more overseas workers than the standard skilled migration programs, and I am aware that there are particular regions in the country that do seek access to more overseas workers than the standard skilled migration programs. Now, in terms of this specific request, I'm advised that there is a long-standing practice of the government of the day to not comment or disclose details of groups, individuals or companies that have ongoing visa matters before the Department of Home Affairs, but I will take the senator's question on notice and provide an update in due course.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Payman, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Minister. These delays are severely impacting the Midwest and Gascoyne regions, with lost output of over $800 million. This DARMA affects 20 local governments in Western Australia, from Exmouth to Three Springs, and these delays are taking a toll. With this in mind, will the minister now consider the Midwest and Gascoyne DARMA as a matter of urgency?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator, for the question. As I've indicated, I'm happy to take the question on notice and provide an update to the senator in due course. But in the meantime, I can provide a little bit more information about the work that is going on through our fee-free TAFE program to meet some of the needs of both Western Australian employers and employees. In fact, in Western Australia, the most enrolled in fee-free TAFE courses to the 31st of March this year include the Certificate 3 in Early Childhood Education and Care, with 2,740 enrolments, Certificate 3 in Individual Support, with 1,896 enrolments, and Diploma of Nursing, with 1,527 enrolments. And I think, obviously, in many other areas, technology and digital and a range of other areas. But I think it is important to note that the types of skills that are often being sought in regional areas aren't necessarily in mining or some of the major industries there. They're in the services sector and the care sector, and that's what that fee-free TAFE program is helping deliver.
Senator Payman, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Minister, and I look forward to receiving the extensive question on notice response. Will the minister join me in meeting with impacted industries and small businesses of the Midwest and Gascoyne regions when Cabinet visits WA in September?
Thank you, Senator Payman. Minister Watt.
Thank you, President. Thank you, Senator Payman. Of course, I'm not going to commit another minister to a particular meeting. That probably wouldn't be a very well-received thing to do, but I'm sure Minister Burke will consider your request. I know that he's very deeply engaged in his portfolio since taking it on a couple of weeks ago, and I know, like all of us, all of the Cabinet and all of the ministry, he's very much looking forward to going to Western Australia, a state that we know expressed a lot of support for the Labor government at the last federal election, and that we have maintained regular contact with, either because we live there in some cases or because we visit there regularly. So I'm sure Minister Burke, like all of us, will be very keen to be at that cabinet meeting, and I'm sure he'll take up your request and consider